Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. And also, Merry Christmas. I am your co-host, Mike, and with me, as always, is your other co-host, John. John, Merry Christmas. How you doing?
Merry Christmas to you too, Mike. I'm doing good, man. Just showed up in Columbus, Ohio, around 6 a.m. this morning.
Oh, wow.
Just, we drove in from Washington, D.C. last night. We had 2 shows there. It was a long week, man. It was 10 shows in 6 days.
Whew,
Yeah,
it's a
it's been
lot.
brutal. Yeah, it's been brutal. I'm surprised I still, it's the nice thing about like singing is it's actually easier on your voice than talking for hours and hours on
Oh,
end.
for
So
sure it is, because you're using good technique and breathing and stuff.
yeah, and then you got all that support. So like it's funny that my voice has been fine and but like dude, it's just it's really more mental exhaustion at this point than like even the physical exhaustion. Although that is definitely
Oh, yeah, you've been on the road for months. You've been locked in show after show. I'm sure you're ready to be done.
Yeah. So it's good. I'm glad I got a couple days here just to relax. We're in a pretty decent hotel here in Columbus, and it's just not that it matters either way. Like as long as I can just have a place to relax and chill, and then do this and talk about some great games and some stuff like that. But life on the road, Christmas on the road, man. It's different. I wish I was home, but that is what it is. Gotta make that money.
Absolutely. I hear you, man. Well, I'll tell you what, in your absence, it is beautiful and white in Minneapolis.
Love that.
And it wasn't supposed to snow today, but when I took the dog out this morning, there was just light flakes coming from the sky.
Perfect.
So it's good. It might warm up enough that it melts a little bit tomorrow, but I don't think it's going to warm up today on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
So I think that's what matters to me, really.
Yeah.
Is that Christmas Eve is a white Christmas.
Well, and it shouldn't warm up so much tomorrow that all of the snow will melt by the end of the day or anything.
Probably not, no.
Yeah. So,
although it might later in the week.
Which, hey, Christmas is over. Not that still isn't disappointing, but for us, it's definitely an important thing to have it there. Christmas Eve and Christmas Day is what I always care about. And then if it wants to melt after, not what I prefer, but okay. But
yeah, I can't deal with when it's weirdly warm on Christmas. Like I did Christmas in Indiana last year and it was like 55 on Christmas Day. And I was like, this isn't right. Where's the cold air? Like for me, it's not really Christmas unless I can feel the cold air in my lungs. And it's like, it's giving you like a little cold air massage. I don't know. Some people don't like that, but I like that feeling of bracing cold air, breathing it in.
Well, where we grew up, and I think, some of that, Scandinavian Germanic blood that runs through our veins. I think it's just part of who we are culturally. So I think it's just what I feel is right. And especially in the wintertime and on the holidays. And right now in Columbus, I think it's in like the 40s and it's just gray and brown and not appealing to look at.
It's depressing, man. It's that post-apocalyptic wasteland thing that winter is in the Midwest when you don't have any snow. Yeah. That's why the people are always like in like Ohio or Michigan are like, how do you do it up in Minnesota? And I'm like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
How do you deal with the gray, lukewarm day after day? Like that's like purgatory, man, to me. I don't love that at all. Whereas we get some variation and like some actual snow that'll stay for a while and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Merry Christmas to everybody out there, everybody who's listening.
Yes, Merry Christmas to all of our listeners.
Yeah. We really appreciate that. And before we get into everything, I'm just going to go over the normal thing. If you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike here at Alibaba26 and me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. You can also email us, We Live for Saturday, B1G@gmail.com.
Awesome. So we're going to do a lot on this show. It's going to be a big show. I'm really excited. We're going to review the playoff games we just had, and then we're going to preview the upcoming bowl and playoff games that we're going to have. So that's, I'm really excited to do all that. But before we get into it, John, are you ready? Are you ready for some media discourse?
I am always ready for some media discourse. Like it's nice that, we get to put them on the spot and, hopefully, get some answers maybe one day here. It'd be great. There's definitely a lot to talk about because a lot of bull crap went down this last week and the media needs to answer for it.
Yeah. So it started on Friday during the Notre Dame game. And suddenly out of nowhere, the Notre Dame Indiana game. And like we're gonna cover it. That game didn't go great for Indiana. As we'll come to, as playoff games often don't. And if you look at the history of the 4-team and now the 12-team college football playoff, there are a lot of blowouts. You know what? There were a lot of blowouts in the BCS championship era too. Guess what? Football is an unpredictable sport played with a not round ball that can bounce any which way. So like you're gonna have some blowouts. So that's not the idea that getting blowouts in the postseason is somehow an indictment of the sport is just totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it started. Sean McDonough, who was calling the game, the Indiana Notre Dame game, started with an Indiana and SMU don't belong narrative, which they started during the game before SMU had even played, by the way.
Wow.
And so I want to direct this to the Sean McDonoughs of the world and to all the pundits who weighed in afterward, like self-proclaimed voice of the sport, Kirk Herbstreit. I would disagree that he's still the voice of the sport, but that's my own personal take. Chris Fowler, Paul Feinbaum, and even Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin got into the act, who, by the way, Kiffin had the shame to tweet "Go Vols."
Yeah.
For the Ohio State Tennessee game. Dude, if PJ Fleck tweeted go Nittany Lions,
Yeah.
or go Penn State during the playoff, I would be wondering why he was tweeting and not working to get Minnesota to next year's playoff. But like, I would also be like, you know what, man, maybe we've had enough. And I love PJ. I want PJ. I'm glad he's here. I hope he stays a long time. I think PJ is great. But like, if he were out there tweeting support for other Big Ten teams in the playoff, like, I don't want to see that.
No, that's unacceptable. And again, that's the difference between the Big Ten and the SEC in that whole SEC homer crap that they chant at each other's games. It's like that never has and never will happen in the Big Ten.
No, we don't want our rivals to win.
No. And essentially, even though you and I, of course, like, and I think Big Ten people are like take pride in the conference and for the historical aspect of it and the cultural aspect of it. No way do we want to see our rivals or other teams like outright just like do better than us. That no, we want everybody to lose except for our team. Like that's the way it is. Like
that's how you're supposed to feel with football.
Yeah.
And like, do you think I wanted Michigan to win last year's national title? I did not. I don't like Michigan. I've never liked Michigan, but they're awesome. They were awesome. What are you going to do? You have to talk about what's real. And my issue with these pundits is that they wouldn't talk about what's real because within one quarter, by the start of the second quarter of the Ohio State Tennessee game, it was clear that Tennessee didn't belong on the same field with Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Texas won, but they didn't win as big as everybody else did against a weaker than usual Clemson. And then suddenly, John, all the SEC apologists just all stopped tweeting.
They disappeared.
Kirk Herbstreit, Paul Feinbaum, they stopped doing interviews. They all pretty much, Lane Kiffin hasn't tweeted since.
Mm-hmm.
They all pretty much pretended the Tennessee result didn't happen because it didn't fit their narrative of SEC superiority. And it's ridiculous. Tennessee looked just as inept or worse than SMU or Indiana did, period. They looked just as out of place, if not more. And you could argue, because remember, everyone's like, oh, Indiana scored in garbage time. Tennessee scored in garbage time too.
Mm-hmm.
So when that game was way, way over. So really that game was more of a 42-10 game, not 42-17.
Yeah.
And even then, I mean, it was as one-sided a contest as I've, ever seen.
It was embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. When a team scores 21 points on you in the first quarter, you don't belong on the same field. You don't.
And it should have been 28-0.
Yeah.
Because remember, they had that Will Howard threw that weird end zone interception that bounced off the one guy and the other guy caught it, and they said he got his foot down. And I don't really think he got his foot down. But they gave it to him, and that stopped Ohio State from scoring another touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that Tennessee didn't belong on the same field with Ohio State. And guess what? In the playoffs, we could go back through all the scores of the 4-team playoff. There are blowouts every year.
Yep.
Every single year. there are blowouts in the playoffs. So you're going to have that because teams have more time to prepare, and the better teams will separate more because they've had more time to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one thing you're in the grind of a season, you're playing people coming off a week, you get a few days of practice, whatever. It's another thing when you get 2 or 3 weeks and you get to just be like, hey, we're just going to beat these guys. And that's all we have to do. And like when that happens, the cream of the crop is going to rise to the top more often than not. So Herb Street is still, the thing is, they all shut up for like 24 hours, but then they start saying the same thing. Feinbaum went on a big rant on his show about SMU and Indiana, didn't say a thing about Tennessee, literally didn't mention it in a whole monologue about the playoff. And Herb Street has been banging the same drum too. And also now he's doing the wounded Herbie thing because he's the most thin-skinned guy in the college football media universe, where he's like, oh, everyone's coming at me. It's like, yeah, you went. And like, just to be clear, Herb Street said, I guess I buried the lead. Herb Street said basically that the results shouldn't matter as much, and we should be more focused on how good the teams are, not whether or not they win the games.
Yeah, let's not talk.
I'm not exaggerating. This isn't an exaggeration.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And all I can take out of that is that you want to be the arbiter of who deserves to be in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And your employer, ESPN, is deeply, deeply financially invested in the SEC up to its gills. So they want to have as many SEC teams in the field as possible. And somehow, even though they got 3 teams in, which is a lot out of 12, somehow that's not enough for them.
Well, and let's face it, dude, over the last how many years, well over a decade, ESPN has been the arbiter of setting the narrative at the beginning of the season, like we talked about preseason polls, of setting all of these SEC teams up for success in order to make the college football playoff and make the national title. Like they have been setting the narrative. They have been the arbiter for the college football playoff and the SEC succeeding time and time and time again. Like, I'm not saying that teams like Alabama, Nick Saban's Alabama, or Georgia or whatever haven't deserved it when they've won it, but you cannot tell me and never will convince me that ESPN has not had a hand in setting this narrative in a certain way for well over a decade now that has allowed the SEC to dominate in the way that it is, and they didn't deserve to always dominate the way they have.
No, and you saw it last year and this year. The Big Ten has been the better conference, and they can't take it. They're losing their minds. And what's funny is Kirk Herbstreit now is saying, hey, wins don't matter. Wins don't matter. We got to look at how good. So I'm like, what are we just judging then? Recruiting rankings? Is that what we're going to do? Should we have put Florida State in the playoff this year because they have a top 10 recruiting class every year? Should we do that? Because that's where that argument is going, Kirk.
Yeah.
And he wants to be in charge of that. And the funniest thing is someone dug up in 2017 Alabama-Ohio State debate, and Ohio State had one more loss, but they also had a bunch of good wins. And Alabama, with their 8-game SEC schedule, basically hadn't played anybody all year. Tough. Yep. And Herb Street said the wins and losses have to matter. So back then, company man Herb Street, when it was to Alabama's advantage, said it's all about the wins and losses. And the college football playoff committee can't forget that no matter how good Ohio State is, they lost to Iowa. And now he's saying, oh, no, it's not about the wins and losses. We got to look at how good we think these teams are. And we need to put them in the playoff based off of that. Man, I don't think these guys are going to be happy until there's 12 SEC teams in a 12-team playoff.
Well, and that's just it. Like, they want to, and you know what? If you want to have your own playoff, then go have your own playoff.
Go. See how it goes.
I don't care. Like, go and crown yourselves the champions of everything in the entire world. No one plays better football than the SEC.
Yeah.
We're not going to be a part of it. Like, I'm fine with that. I do not give a shit about anyone in that conference. And I would rather just eliminate them entirely. And like, let's just focus on the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, what the group of 5, man. I would, if that was the way the playoffs our playoffs went down, I'd be perfectly okay with that, and eliminate them and let them play in their own sandbox. It wouldn't bother me in the least.
Yeah. And look, if you want to fix the playoff and kind of get fewer blowouts, then seed the teams 1 through 12. And like, yes, you can still have the 4 highest ranked conference champions get in, But if you're ranked 12th or 13th and you get in as a conference champion, you're going to be at the bottom of the playoff seedings.
Yeah.
Because Boise State and Arizona State should not have both gotten buys.
Yeah, true.
And that's why, imagine if those teams, if you swap out Penn State and Notre Dame and put them in the top 4 and then have Boise and Arizona State play last weekend, do we have better games?
Yeah.
If we had Arizona State against Indiana or something, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, would that have been a much better game? Probably. But the reason all this makes me so upset is that the whole idea of expanding this playoff was that there's too many teams in this sport. It's too hard to judge how good they are. Like, we need to have a playoff so we can have them play it out on the field and decide a champion. And everybody got on board for that. I didn't love the idea. I've never enjoyed it. Honestly, if it were up to me, I'd go back to bowls and polls.
Yeah.
But it's not up to me, and that's not how the world works anymore, and it's never going to be. So they decided we're going to go with this playoff format, an expanded playoff. And part of having an expanded playoff is that you have to have representation of different leagues and different parts of the country, or else you're not crowning if you put 6 SEC teams in a 12-team playoff, that's not a national playoff anymore.
Yeah.
It just isn't. So and the SEC's got 3 teams in out of 12. That's a quarter of the teams. That's pretty good. And they're here whining and moaning because they feel like they should have gotten like 5 or 6.
Oh yeah, they still think Alabama should have been in, or I've heard arguments for South Carolina. Like all
Alabama, who in 2 weeks in November played Mercer, and then the next week lost to a 6 or at the time 5-6 Oklahoma team, 24-3.
Yeah.
All they had to do was win to get in the playoff. So I just don't want to hear, especially when the SEC is still only playing 8 conference games. The Big 10 and the Big 12 play 9 conference games. And the SEC is out here playing 8 conference games, telling you that our teams deserve the benefit of the doubt for going 5-3 in conference and missing most of the best teams in the SEC, because that's when you only play 8 conference games, you don't play a lot of people.
And we cannot minimize, not that we are, but minimize the advantage it is to have that layup in late November to allow some of your starters to get healthy on the stretch.
It's like an extra bye week. It's an extra bye week.
Yeah, you just put in your second string guys and let them play and get some experience. Like, your starters can basically take
your starters are done at half in those games.
So they don't, and they
don't have to show anything schematically. So they can just go vanilla because they know they have the guys outmanned so much. They don't have, so they can actually coach for the next game. So Alabama had basically 2 weeks to prepare for Oklahoma, and they still couldn't score a touchdown.
Exactly.
In a football game, couldn't score a touchdown. So, like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any 3-loss team complain. I don't.
No.
I don't care. I don't care if one of your 3 losses was to the 85 Bears. Or the 96 Cornhuskers or the 01 Hurricanes. Like, I don't care who is on there. Like, let's be real here.
And there would not, this same argument would not be made for any other conference. There would be nobody out there saying the same thing in favor of the Big Ten, or there'd be few anyways. Maybe there would be
because ESPN still sets the media narrative for college football.
Exactly.
And all these other, I'm talking to all these other news organizations, networks, NBC, CBS, Fox, you need to start fighting back more.
Yep.
And I've seen Joel Klatt pushing back, and good for him. And I saw, Troy Aikman, of all people, made a great point. A guy who I never think of with college football because his whole thing is pro football. Yeah. And he said it's a shame that instead of celebrating all these teams who made the first expanded college football playoff, instead of celebrating these teams and being like, wow, it's such a cool thing that they all got here, the way we do with March Madness.
Yeah.
When teams make the tournament, we say, hey, it's so cool that they're here.
Yeah.
Not win or lose or whatever. But instead, we turn the conversation and discourse, instead of celebrating these teams, to denigrating them, to trying to argue that some of them didn't belong because they lost on the field. That's what happens. Teams win and lose. And we talked about there's so many blowouts. So it makes me really upset. This whole thing makes my blood boil.
Yeah, man. And that's not what it was supposed to be. And it's, again, this all stems from ESPN and the SEC. and all the people that continue to shill for that conference.
I'm really
and
disappointed
that
in Herb
network.
Street, man.
Yeah.
Herb Street he's legit the best commentator in our sport.
Yeah.
He's the best like play-by-play. He's not the play-by-play guy, but he's the best color commentator in our sport by far.
Yeah.
He's very talented.
Sure.
But for him to be such a company man and be so obsequious to the SEC and to ignore what happens on the field, even with the Tennessee game, and still he was speculating like, oh, well, I guess Alabama and Miami should have been in.
Yeah.
And just because he wants the biggest brands in, and also ESPN also owns the ACC, the rights to the ACC. So yeah, dude, it's all really disappointing. But here's the good part. The silver lining of all of it is that people aren't taking this anymore on looking at Twitter, dude. Nobody was agreeing with it. You see these everyone's like clipping the Herb Street article, and you go into the comments, and there's almost nobody agreeing with him.
Yeah.
There's almost nobody on Feinbaum's side. Like, and if they are fans of SEC teams, and that's it. But everybody else is just like, we're done with this. We don't respect your opinion anymore. We see that Herb Street, at this point, it's amazing because as much as Herb Street can tell us about college football and as much as we can learn about scheme and different things from him, he has destroyed his credibility when it talks about the bigger issues in the sport. And I can't take him seriously anymore. I can't.
Well, you and I we saw this coming like 10 years ago or more.
Yes.
We started, I remember you and I would have discussions about it, like when we still watched College Game Day, which I haven't, and I don't even know how long. Cause it just makes me mad. And
I do too. I watch it, but like, I don't know. I have weird feelings about it at this point.
I mean, at this point, I do it out of spite because I just can't, because I just can't support ESPN in any way.
Yeah, good for you.
Maybe I'm super petty about it, but like, I feel like I have the right to be that way against that network.
I mean, hey, nobody's pettier than Herb Street, so you're allowed to be as petty as you want, John. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. We're gonna be as petty as we want to be.
See, it's just been a long time coming. Desmond Howard, same thing. Like these are like both like Big Ten guys that we've been. You would think, of course you got to be, as unbiased as possible. Yeah, absolutely. We get it. Like that's part of your job as a media member, but like not to be absolutely and utterly biased, be as biased as possible, which is,
and they want to be treated like they're infallible. Yeah. They're spewing company nonsense, but Herb Street, he really wants everyone to agree with him, and he's offended that they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, he called 25% of Ohio State fans the lunatic fringe. The lunatic fringe is a quarter of your fans? Really? Mm-hmm. Come on, man. That's harsh. That is harsh. Yeah. If it weren't for Ohio State, Herb Street would be selling insurance somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I don't like, it is so weird to watch him hate on his alma mater. Dude, I get why Ohio State fans can't stand him. Mm-hmm. I get it. For a long time, I was like, oh, you guys are too hard on Herb Street. Oh, he's a good commentator. Oh, but like, I didn't see all the little things and digs and things he does. It's not great. And so it's just too bad that a guy who I think both of us respected a lot in the past has kind of just become this Paul Feinbaum-esque shill.
Well, and everybody and all of the people over there and anyone who has aspirations, Josh Pate, that want to, they've just become an SEC shill, and they're just, all they're doing is following his lead and just essentially regurgitating the same stuff he feeds them already. So you're just hearing the same thing over and over again. But I do respect what Shannon Sharp said though on I think First Take when regarding Herb Street and Chris Fowler and talking about Ohio State and Ryan Day being done and whatnot. And I thought it made me really respect Shannon Sharp. I already did, like as a player, and I've always liked his commentary. I think like the way he is as a person too is kind of in some ways is respectable that he just speaks his mind. And he goes, the quote was, "If we're going to be on the same team, if we're going to work for the same network, don't do that." Chris Fowler, I promise you, if you ever mention any platform that I'm on again talking about, I wonder what they're gonna say as negativity. I promise you, ESPN ain't got enough bosses to keep me off y'all for what I'm going to say. Don't play with me. Like, he said that on ESPN on First Take with Stephen A. Smith, and Stephen A. Smith was like, whoa.
And
Like,
just to clarify for everybody, this is in response to Herb Street. Shannon Sharp on First Take had said that Ryan Day should lose his job, and Kirk Herbstreit basically said, "Oh, First Take had him fired. First Take had Ryan Day fired." So I do love the infighting at ESPN. It's good to see. Good for Shannon Sharp for standing up. But yeah, man, I just think the playoffs. I'm with. I'm in the camp that this should be a celebration of all the teams that made it, regardless of what happens in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And not every game is going to be the best game. Not every game is the 2007 Fiesta Bowl, you know? Like, it's not all going to be awesome. And that's just the way it is. That's the way it's always been. And you can't use results that are predictable to try to advance an agenda that's just dishonest.
Well, and can we also not just celebrate the teams that got there, but can we also focus more on, I know some people have talked about it and people are trying to push that out there, but can we really celebrate the fact that these first round playoff games were home field games? And
it was amazing.
It was amazing. And
oh my goodness.
More of them. There's honestly, other than maybe the semifinal and the national championship, there is zero freaking reason to ever play another playoff game not at a school's home field. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. This was a massive success.
A huge success. And visiting fans enough were able to get in.
Yeah.
And it was, dude, it was a huge success. And it's so exciting to have those games on campus. And it was palpable. And man, I have never seen anyone as scared as Kevin Jennings facing that Penn State whiteout.
Oh, dude.
I mean, he was just intimidated from the word go. And like the guy, I felt bad for him. I was like, you got to put the backup in. He's in because he's in the portal, but their backup, Preston Stone, is still on the team. I was like, in the third, by halfway through the second quarter, I was like, you got to put the backup in. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
After his second pick six, I was like, and then he had a red zone interception after that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll talk about it. All right.
Yeah,
Should
we'll
we get into
talk
recapping these playoff games?
Yeah. I just wanted one more thing about that, though. About
yes, go for it.
Like, as far as that aren't about the game itself, well, kind of. How justified, like, how good did you feel to see these Southern teams play in some cold ass football weather?
Dude, Tennessee and SMU looked miserable.
It was amazing.
Tennessee tried to do the shirtless thing before kickoff, and by the time they got to kickoff, they were all shivering on the sideline. Oh yeah, it's not the South, kids.
Nope. I tweeted at Josh Pate on purpose for that reason. I had to point that out, and it made me feel so good. Dude, he'd been trolling all season about that whole thing. So
yeah,
football weather.
I mean, yeah, the Big Ten might never lose a national title if all the playoff games were on campus.
Absolutely.
Big Ten might just win every year because those teams were so not ready for it. It was glorious.
Yep. Sorry, that's the one other point I just wanted to bring up before we moved on.
Yeah, I hope when Alabama makes the playoff again, they have to come north.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they do. That would be really funny.
Yep.
As funny as it was for Tennessee. But we will get to that. So we are going to quick recap the playoff games, the Big Ten ones, and then we will talk about preview all the upcoming bowl and playoff games. So this is going to be a big episode. Everybody gets strapped in. But if you're going about your holiday business, we are your background noise while you're wrapping presents, while your kids are in bed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All right. First up, we had Friday night. We had the number 7 Notre Dame Fighting Irish 27, the number 10 Indiana Hoosiers 17. This game was not as close as the score indicated. It also wasn't as lopsided as Penn State SMU or Ohio State Tennessee. So it was a poor performance, but it certainly wasn't the worst performance in the playoff. But this went off the rails early, man. It happened when Indiana took what should have been a chance to go up 7-0. Not only did they not score, but then the Irish capitalized immediately after. So on their second play from scrimmage, Irish QB Riley Leonard threw a pick, which resulted in Hoosier ball at the Notre Dame 41. After a penalty, IU completed a 28-yard pass to star receiver Elijah Surratt for a first down at the Irish 17. Indiana had a chance to score and take the lead in the matchup, but on first down, Curtis Rourke inexplicably threw into heavy coverage and was intercepted. Rourke had no business making that throw, so that was a blow. But still, Notre Dame was on its 2-yard line. It's 0-0. A 3-and-out. Indiana would be right back in position to score, but that's not what happened. On 1st and 10 from their own 2, Notre Dame handed off the ball to Jeremiah Love, and he ran 98 yards for a touchdown. And in the process, he outran the entire Hoosier secondary. It was ugly, and it made it clear immediately that the Irish had a speed advantage at the skill positions. The Hoosiers punted after 8 plays, and then the Irish mounted a 16-play, 83-yard scoring drive that took over 9 minutes and was devastating to IU. Long drives like that wear out your defense, and they cause your offense to get rusty on the sideline. The two teams then traded punts and field goals. Then it was halftime, but the damage was done, and a 17-3 lead was extended to 27-3 before the Hoosiers scored 2 meaningless touchdowns in 6.3 yards per attempt, 1 TD and 1 pick for a QBR of 66.8. Outside of that 98-yard Love run, the Irish didn't do a ton on the ground. They ended up with just 95 more rushing yards after the early long TD run. But Irish wide receiver Jordan Faison caught 7 balls for 89 yards. Nobody else did very much receiving wise. So he was the key guy keeping the Irish on the field when they needed conversions. And then Irish safety Xavier Watts had 10 tackles, including 5 solo and a half tackle for loss. So good day for him. And then for Indiana, QB Curtis Rourke, 20 for 33, 215 yards, 6.5 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, and that costly interception for a QBR of just 63.6, which is one of his lowest of the season. Indiana managed just 63 yards rushing, John, as they couldn't move the ball on the ground. I'll go into that a little more later. Wide receiver Elijah Surratt at 4 for 67, Miles Price at 5 for 56 and a TD, but the passing game just didn't do as much as I believe it should have. And shout out to Hoosier D lineman James Carpenter at 7 tackles, a sack, 2 TFLs, and also a pass defended. A monster game from him. John, what'd you think about this game?
Yeah, I wasn't able to catch a lot of these games in full, just because of my busy schedule, but I was able to watch what I could, and then, took a peek at a lot of those extended highlights and whatnot, and read a couple things here and there. But it was what I could tell, man. It was exactly kind of what you warned me about how you were thinking that Indiana or Notre Dame was going to outmatch Indiana at the line of scrimmage, and
that was
especially
my fear
with that running game. And you were right. There was some similarities, I would say, to the Ohio State game, but Indiana is as good as they've been, I think, at the skill position, and they have had times where I think their offensive and defensive lines have looked good. It's just too hard. The depth isn't there. So I think that makes it really difficult when you're playing teams like Ohio State or like Notre Dame, where the depth of talent is crazy, and it is all the time. So I think that's kind of where it hurt Indiana the most, and obviously Curtis Rourke did not have his best day either. But even if he played better, I think it still, it still would have been a loss for the Hoosiers. I was hoping for the opposite. I was rooting hard for you guys, but for the Hoosiers, but let's just say it wasn't the most embarrassing loss of the college football playoff. So
not close. It wasn't close to the most embarrassing loss.
Yes. So, I feel bad for you, but again, we are going to celebrate the fact that you got here and had an extraordinary season.
11-2.
That's
11-2.
First year head coach, 11-2. Indiana Hoosiers, who have been the worst program in college football, in the Big Ten especially.
Yes.
And now to do this, it's still, this is a massive, massive year, and should be absolutely proud of what you guys have accomplished. So, but
don't let one loss overcome like the good feelings that you developed this year, Indiana fans. No. I was wearing my Indiana hat watching the game. I got it. Right. Got it right here. But so it's been a great year. And to segue, we have praised Curt Cignetti all year. He coached the power conference school with the most losses in history to the college football playoff in his first year in charge. As you said, John, monumental accomplishment. He was rightfully awarded the National Coach of the Year honors.
Yeah,
That said,
absolutely.
Cignetti coached a poor game here.
Yeah.
He got badly outcoached, especially in the first half. Marcus Freeman of Notre Dame was playing a simple game with Indiana. The Irish went with light numbers in the box, and they dared the Hoosiers to try to run the ball. Freeman did this because he knew that Notre Dame's D-line was far superior to Indiana's O-line. And the thing is, I, your humble podcaster, knew that too. I knew that Indiana was absolutely not going to be able to run the ball consistently against Notre Dame. Football is normally a numbers game. If the box is light, you run. If it's heavy, you pass. But it's different when the other team has such a big talent advantage over you up front. Cignetti should have come out passing nonstop and just run the ball enough to keep the Irish honest. But instead, he foolishly spent the entire first half trying to establish the run because he got gun shy after Curtis Rourke threw one interception. Curtis Rourke threw an interception, and Cignetti started coaching like he was scared. And for all his big talk, and boy, did he talk big, talked about how he doesn't just beat top 20 teams, he beats the piss out of them. And he said something harsher than piss. But in this game, he coached scared. Way too long establishing the run, didn't seem to have many or any really trick plays ready. It's as if Cignetti thought he could line up against Notre Dame like they were Purdue, and somehow that was going to work. So it was extremely unwise. In my opinion, look, Indiana was going to lose this game, but Cignetti dug his team a hole by playing not to lose instead of attacking. And by the time he started attacking, it was too late, and their confidence was gone. Last thing I'll say, Irish really impressed me, man. This is not a Brian Kelly Notre Dame squad.
Yeah.
They're more talented up front than I expected them to be. They are legit contenders. And I won't be surprised if they beat Georgia in the next round, especially now that Georgia's starting QB Carson Beck is going to miss the postseason with his arm injury.
Yep. I agree. I think that's that's the right assessment. I was, Riley Leonard did just enough throwing the ball, but he's such a threat with his legs.
Oh yeah.
He's so hard to contain that it's just always keeping the defense guessing. And you could see that it's hard to stop that. And then obviously, you've got Jeremiah Love, who is just a dominant force.
He ran by that IU safety like he was standing still.
It was crazy.
That was wild.
Yeah.
It was like,
and even just you would think he was getting tired by the time he got to like the 40 and the 50 heading towards the end zone. And he was still pulling away like it was nothing. So.
No, that safety chasing him reminded me a little bit of me when I would run in track because like I was really quick, right? So the 40-yard dash was really good.
Yeah.
But 100 meters, man, when I hit that top speed, I didn't get much faster.
Yeah.
And so it'd be like, I'd get out. I mean, at the beginning of every race, I'm out in front, like, oh, I'm killing it. And then everybody just kind of runs past me. Like at some point, like that's what I feel like this was.
Yeah.
I feel like Jeremiah Love ran past Indiana in that moment that it seemed pretty unlikely Indiana was going to win after those two plays, after the pick and then that to come right after.
Yep. No, you're right.
But great season for the Hoosiers, man. I'm excited. It's going to be interesting to watch them next year. Their schedule is considerably harder next year.
Yes.
Their first 3 Big Ten games are Illinois, Iowa, and Oregon. So Curt Cignetti, man, I think he can do it. I think he can, not saying he's going to win all those games, but I think he can be competitive in those games and win some of those games.
Sure.
But it's going to be really interesting to see. They just picked up, it looks like, the Cal quarterback in the portal, Fernando, I believe. I forget his last name. But I know I want to sing the song.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to be singing it all year. Not this episode, because it's the Christmas episode. But I will at some point, we're going to sing the song after he plays well, for sure.
Yes.
We'll
get a soundbite for it, specifically for him.
Oh, dude, we should. That's a good call. We'll get that going in the off season. I'll have to pick that up and add that to the soundboard.
Be perfect.
Awesome. All right. Should we move on to the next game?
Let's do it.
We had the number 6 Penn State Nittany Lions 38, the number 11 SMU Mustangs 10. Instead of boring you with some long diatribe here, let's get down to brass tacks and just talk about the first half possessions for each team. Penn State punt. Southern Methodist turnover on downs. Penn State punt. SMU throws a pick six. SMU punt. Penn State turnover on downs. SMU throws another pick six. SMU punt. PSU turnover on downs because James Franklin went for it on 4th and 1 from his own 20. 4th and 1 from his own 20, but then SMU throws another interception.
Oh, God.
Then Penn State answers with a 9-play, 75-yard touchdown drive. SMU turnover on downs. Another Penn State touchdown drive. SMU punt. End of half. So Penn State actually came out a little slow offensively in this game, but the defense, man, the defense was world beating. Abdul Carter was a wrecking ball. Penn State scored on 2 pick sixes before their offense did much of anything. And then once they were up 14-0, the offense was like, oh yeah, we should play too. And then they showed up and played pretty well. But they didn't. They kind of took the first quarter off mostly, the Penn State offense. They were like, we're just going to let the defense play. And but then they got it going. And once Penn State got up 38-3, they just kind of tried to get the game over with. Penn State QB Drew Aller low-key didn't play very well to start this game, missing several open receivers. That said, he played better as the game progressed and ended up 13 of 22 for 127 yards, nearly 6 yards per attempt, 0 picks, QBR 56.8. They didn't ask Aller to do too much, and he did what was necessary. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen combined for 160 yards on 6.4 yards per rush and 3 TDs. And that was the story of the game. Penn State bullied SMU. They bullied them on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Tyler Warren had 4 catches for 33 yards, but it was the running game and defense that dominated on this day. Defensive end Abdul Carter had 3 tackles, including a sack and 2 TFLs. But, man, he was just harassing Kevin Jennings nonstop. And for SMU, Kevin Jennings had an atrocious day, going just 20 for 36, 195 yards, 5.4 yards per attempt, 1 TD, 3 picks, including the 2 pick sixes, for a QBR of just 13.8. 13.8. So that is one of the worst QBRs we've seen all season. It's safe to say Penn State and Kevin Jennings, we're seeing ghosts out there. It was ridiculous. So, and also SMU couldn't run the ball either, and they ended up with just 58 yards rushing on 1.5 yards per rush. So, John, what'd you think about this one?
Yeah, this was an absolute shellacking. And, mainly due to, like you already stated, Penn State's defense. It was just so dominant. And you could tell that Kevin Jennings was absolutely terrified. And we talked a little bit before the pod, and you mentioned, like in that whiteout setting, which you and I both experienced. We've been at whiteouts, and it is terrifying.
It's so loud.
Yeah.
It's like one of the loudest places I've ever been in my entire life.
It's insane. Your ears are ringing for hours afterwards. Yeah. So I can only imagine what Kevin Jennings was feeling on that field, and especially never having played in, I feel like an environment like that. I'm not sure if that existed anywhere that the Mustangs have been playing.
Does not exist in the ACC.
Or in the ACC at all. I don't think it does.
No.
Someone might make an argument for
Clemson's probably closest.
Yeah. But this is nothing in comparison. Like I don't know anywhere else that can get like this. But so that was terrifying, and you could see it. You could see that he was absolutely scared, and rightfully so. That Penn State defense is elite.
Yeah.
But the one thing is, like offensively, it makes you wonder still if Penn State's offense can continue to carry them through to the next round. As good as they've been, as good as, what a freak Tyler Warren is and all that, it's just the fact that they take so long to get going is concerning. And yes, this was an absolute, like I said, shellacking of the SMU Mustangs. Penn State, and they might have another easier round actually next, since they are playing Boise State. But I don't think it's enough to win a national title. I just don't see it. Not saying it can't happen, but I think after this next round, Penn State's gonna, maybe have a really, really, really difficult time unless Drew Aller and their offense can pick things up and make it work better. And James Franklin cannot make a James Franklin mistake like he did. And luckily, he was only playing against SMU, so it didn't cost him. But
didn't cost him at all.
Yeah, but he still did it.
He did it.
Because of course
he did it in a game he was up 2 touchdowns in. Went for it on 4th and 1 from his own 20. And then he ran a sneak or he ran a handoff, I think. I don't know. Whatever. It was not great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Penn State was just superior in every way.
Yeah.
You know, they overcame a bad start to the game. D was really sharp. They dominated SMU at all levels. It was an impressive display. I will say Penn State's offense was really good against Oregon. And I wonder if they weren't playing possum a little bit schematically.
Yeah.
Holding back. I think Penn State, I think James Franklin looked at the film and was like, we're going to crush these guys.
Yeah.
And I think he probably held back a lot of their better stuff. Because remember, Penn State went nuclear on Oregon at the Big Ten title game.
That's true.
Rushed for 300 yards, have well over 500 yards of offense. So Penn State can do it, but they're not going to do it throwing the ball to Tyler Warren 4 times.
Yeah.
Like you got to throw the ball to Tyler Warren like 15 times.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's just, if Penn State's going to win, that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I don't think this is necessarily a national title team, but, you know, they get Boise State next.
Yeah.
So we will talk about that game in a little bit. Spoiler alert, I like Penn State's chances.
Same here. Yeah.
But yeah, the size and speed differential was just between SMU and Penn State was huge in favor of the Nittany Lions. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, there are a lot of Big Ten teams that could take SMU to the woodshed.
I agree. I think
Illinois or full strength Iowa or Minnesota or, you know,
dude, even Rutgers on a good, I think
Rutgers on the right day. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think all of those teams could cause a lot of trouble for SMU.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Let's move on to the next game. We had the number 8 Ohio State Buckeyes 42, the number 9 Tennessee Volunteers 17. Ohio State won this game by 4 scores, and somehow that is not enough to show how dominant this performance was.
Yeah.
Tennessee had 0 chance in this game. Ohio State was far superior along both lines of scrimmage. Their skill players were faster and more dynamic than those of Tennessee. And the problem that was exacerbated when star Tennessee running back Dylan Sampson sustained an injury and didn't return to the game. So the Buckeyes won this game in the first quarter. They drove 75 yards in 5 plays to score a touchdown on their opening drive. Then Tennessee punted. Ohio State went 68 yards in 5 plays for a touchdown. Tennessee punted. And then Ohio State went 58 yards for a 3rd touchdown. Tennessee then punted. So if it hadn't been for that questionable Ohio State end zone interception, it would have been 28-0 before Tennessee scored. And it took a phantom roughing the passer penalty to get the Vols into the end zone in the first half. That was absolutely not, John, I know you didn't see everything. It was not roughing the passer at all. In fact, the guy had him wrapped up before he let go of the ball.
Oh, I did see that. I saw that in the replay. Yeah, dude, that was insane.
That gave Tennessee a touchdown, pretty much.
Yep. Yeah.
So that was ridiculous. Anyway, Ohio State was up 42-10 when Tennessee drove and scored a meaningless late touchdown. So you can argue that Ohio State didn't give up a legit touchdown in this whole game.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State QB Will Howard, man, played the game of his life. 24 for 29, 311 yards, 10.7 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, and 1 interception for a red-hot QBR of 98.8.
Mm-hmm.
That's a temperature. That's
and
not
an
a QBR. That's a temperature. Oh, I'm 98.8. I got to go. I'm a little hot. I better not go to work today.
Yeah, and
That's
imagine if that interception, which was questionable as an interception anyways, didn't happen. If that wouldn't have counted, like, dude, I mean, a perfect game, essentially. Like,
yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Running back Travion Henderson was great with 80 yards on just 8 carries and 2 touchdowns. And then, of course, man, Frosh wide receiver Jeremiah Smith.
Oh, my God.
6 catches, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns. John, he's the most physically dominant wide receiver I have seen at the collegiate level since Calvin Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Remember him?
Yep.
Megatron,
yep.
I think we called him. Smith is that same kind. He's not as tall, but he's that same kind of physical marvel. And his ability to make big play contested catches is unmatched in college football. The dude is amazing. And don't forget senior wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, who had 5 catches for 81 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And then on defense, man, senior DN Jack Sawyer was a menace. in the backfield, wreaking havoc all night. He finished with 5 tackles, including 1.5 sacks. He even had 2 passes defended. Sawyer was unbelievable. For Tennessee, brutal night. Nico Iamaleava completed under 50% of his passes, going just 14 for 31. Forget this, 104 yards, 3.4 yards per attempt. No touchdowns, no picks. So those who expected a big night from Nico were once again left scratching their heads. And Tennessee finished under 4 yards per rush, despite tacking on some meaningless yards late. At wide receiver, Brew McCoy had 4 catches for 40 yards, but it wasn't nearly enough as Ohio State put the clamps on the Tennessee passing game. John, what'd you think about this old-fashioned beatdown?
I mean, that's exactly what it was, man. It was Ohio State was dominant all over that field. There was not any point in time that I thought that Tennessee was going to make a comeback. I know the second quarter, some Ohio State fans got a little nervous, but I think I didn't feel that way. You saw how things were going at the line of scrimmage, and Ohio State was just pushing them around anywhere and everywhere they wanted them to go.
Mm-hmm.
And Tennessee had nothing, period. And Nico couldn't get anything going. He was scared. Their running game couldn't do anything. I mean, there wasn't any, and their receivers couldn't get open. Like, it was
no separation. None. Yeah.
It was just domination on every level, and it's exactly what we wanted to see. And this is the Ohio State that you and I picked to win the national title game.
Last summer. This is the team last summer we thought we were going to see.
And we're seeing it now, and they are getting hot at the right time. And frankly, didn't it now the odds are actually in Ohio State's favor of
dude? They're favored over Oregon last I checked by 2.5 points.
Yep. Yeah. So now we're seeing this team, and that Oregon Ohio State game is going to be very interesting. And prior to this game, I would have still given Oregon the edge, but now I don't know if this Ohio State team is hot and stays this hot. I don't think there's anybody who can stop them. Period.
I mean, I agree, man. I think that Oregon Ohio State. I said it before the game. I'm saying it now. I think Oregon Ohio State is the real national title game.
Yeah.
Whoever, barring major injury, whoever wins that game is going to win the national title.
I agree.
And I could not be more excited to see that game.
Absolutely.
It's going to be great. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too.
Sure. But yet, Tennessee, sorry. Not great.
Yeah, Tennessee. Maybe they don't belong, John. Maybe Tennessee shouldn't have been in the playoff at all.
They really shouldn't, I don't think so. I don't know.
I mean, if they're just going to, aren't there more deserving teams?
Yeah, well, they're playing in a pretty weak conference, So
yeah, it's true.
I think Illinois should have been.
And they only play 8 conference games. Can you really say that's even a full conference schedule?
Exactly. You know who is more deserving? Illinois. Illinois should have probably been playing in that game over Tennessee.
Dude, I think Illinois should have been ranked over some of those 9-3 SEC teams.
Totally agree.
Their 3 losses were to Oregon, Penn State, and Minnesota. Also 2 elite teams, and then a Minnesota team that's probably going to win 8 games.
Yep.
So, and then compare that to Alabama's losses. They lost to a 6-6 Oklahoma team and a 6-6 Vandy team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not, honestly, yeah, that's the thing. That's what bothers me. The SEC is already getting the benefit of the doubt.
Yep.
By ranking teams like Alabama and South Carolina way over Illinois. That's showing that you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. And these people still complain. They still complain, even though everything is set up in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand it, man. It's wild to me.
Yep. So, yeah, I think Illinois would have done better than Tennessee in this game. That's what
I do too.
Say.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I'm not actually, I actually mean that. I genuinely mean that. I think they would have.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you, man.
Yep.
They would have generated more offense, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any stopping this Ohio State team from scoring points. No. But I think Illinois, with Pat Bryant for sure would have made it a little more interesting than this. I love that we've just started. Yeah, this is just now an SEC bashing podcast.
Well, hey, man, somebody's got to counter.
Somebody's got to push back. Yeah. Somebody's got to push back on the lies and the propaganda, and it's it's us.
Yeah,
for sure. Anyway, with how well both teams are playing, it's going to be absolutely electric in the Rose Bowl. We'll talk about that one a little later. Mm-hmm. And then Penn State will be moving on to play Boise in the Fiesta Bowl. So that's going to be really exciting too. All right, let's talk about some bowl games, and then we'll get back into playoff games as we go. So we're just going to take all the games in the order they happen, whether it's a bowl game or a playoff game. So first up, we have on Thursday, December 26th, the Rate Bowl, featuring the 7-5 Rutgers Scarlet Knights and the 8-4 Kansas State Wildcats. Rutgers, of course, the Big Ten, Kansas State of the Big 12. This is a 4:30 p.m. game on ESPN. The line is Kansas State -7, although it started as 7.5 and has moved half a point in Rutgers' direction since then. Neither of these teams quite had the years they expected to have. K-State had its eyes set firmly on a Big 12 title this season, while Rutgers believed with so much returning production they could win 8 or 9 games. Both fell short of those goals, although Rutgers can get to 8 games if they win the bowl game. For Kansas State, first-year starting QB Avery Johnson has been up and down. He's a talented former 4-star recruit. However, his passing has been a little below average this year, completing just 59% of his passes, 7.4 yards per attempt, 22 TDs, and 9 picks. Johnson's electric with his legs, however, rushing for 548 yards for the year on 5.4 yards per rush and 6 rushing TDs. He's a good second banana to starting running back DJ Giddens, who had over 1,300 yards rushing this year on an impressive 6.6 yards per rush and 7 TDs. So these are two dynamic players, and Rutgers needs to slow down that Wildcat rushing attack if they're going to attack, if they're going to have a chance to win this game. Can Kansas State consistently make plays in the passing game? That's the question. Also, K-State and Rutgers both have several guys in the portal, and some are likely opting out. So it'll be interesting to see which guys are elevated for this game and how they play. For Rutgers, started hot, sputtered in the middle, finished the season strong to get to 7-5. Rutgers running back Kyle Monungai is one of the best players in the country, finished with nearly 1,300 yards rushing and 13 TDs. If Rutgers is going to pull the upset, they need to get Monungai going. It's also important that QB Ethan Kaliakmanis protect the ball. He's completed just 55% of his passes this year, but he played better later in the year and did have 17 TDs to just 6 picks. He's got to protect the ball to give Rutgers a chance in this one. Wide receivers Demir Miller and Ian Strong will need to make contested plays downfield, as those guys have been good on 50-50 balls all season. John, how do you see this one turning out?
I see this in favor of Rutgers a little bit. I'm leaning towards the Scarlet Knights. I think, Johnson, he's very dangerous with his legs, but he's not super accurate, and I don't think he has a lot of great receiving options.
No.
So it's really, if you can contain him and take him out of the game, I mean, there's really not much else I think Kansas State really can threaten you with. Like, yeah, sure, DJ Giddens he's fine. I don't think he's no Kyle Monungai, that's for sure.
No.
So I think the edge to me goes to the Scarlet Knights. I think you have Kyle Monungai, and obviously if he's going, it's always hard to stop him, nearly impossible. And then with the way Ethan has been playing at the latter portion of the year, man, he looks great. He really has. He's looked accurate. He looks cool. He looks calm. He's making his connections and all the right reads. And so I think Rutgers is going to be able to win this game. I do think it'll be kind of close, but I don't think it's ever going to look like it's like Rutgers isn't in control. So I have this game predicted at Rutgers 28 and Kansas State at 20.
Okay. I had a really hard time with this game.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with it a lot. I have a lot of respect for Kansas State head coach Chris Kleiman. Mm-hmm. You could argue he's one of the great coaches in all of college football when it comes to talent evaluation and development. What he's done at K-State is amazing, and he's even won a Big 12 title. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
But K-State's passing game never really got going this year.
Mm-hmm.
Their D is salty enough, but I think the Rutgers D was playing really well at the end of the year too.
Yeah.
And I just think Rutgers is peaking at the right time, man. With Kyle Monungai expected to play, I like the Scarlet Knights to squeak out a close victory. So I have Rutgers Scarlet Knights 23, Kansas State 20.
Okay.
So we both picked the same total. It's so funny when we both pick games. So we never talk about it, but we end up so close so much of the time. It's just hilarious. All right, moving on to Friday, December 27th. We have the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. The 6-6 USC Trojans versus the 8-4 Texas A&M Aggies. This is a 9:30 p.m. game on ESPN, so drink some coffee and stay up late. The line is Texas A&M by 3. Texas A&M had a really interesting year under first-year head coach Mike Elko. They lost to Notre Dame in a rough game early where they played poorly on offense. It seemed like the new offense wasn't where it needed to be. They had a couple more shaky performances, including a narrow 26-20 win over Bowling Green. But they sort of kept getting better. The losses to South Carolina and Texas are defensible, but both again featured offensive struggles. The loss to Auburn was a lot less excusable, but such is life when you're rebuilding. Despite all that, they went into the last game with against Texas with a chance to make the SEC title game before their offense fell on its face again. Marcel Reed supplanted Connor Wegman at QB in November and promptly raised A&M's play and expanded the reach of the offense with his athleticism. Reed is completing 61% of his passes, has 12 TDs to 4 picks, but his running ability expands the offense as he ran for 501 yards on over 4.5 yards per carry. And those have been big yards for A&M. He was also sacked 13 times. So if you take out the sacks, his yards per rush are much higher. At wide receiver, there's no dominant player. Noah Thomas had the most catches, but they need help from somebody else out of Barber, Walker, Allen, and the tight end Watson. Can any of those guys get open and make plays? They need to in order to support this offense. USC, though, they made a QB change midseason also as Jaden Maeva took over from Miller Moss in mid-November. It was extremely late to make that change and show the desperation of a USC team that was not yet bowl eligible. USC managed to win their first 2 games with Maeva before falling to the Irish. Against Notre Dame, Maeva threw for 360 yards, but he also threw 2 late pick sixes to seal the game. So he's a threat with his legs, and he's also completing just 61% of his passes. Bottom line for me, John, is that USC's best players are in the portal or opting out. Mm-hmm. Marks has gone to the NFL. Joyner's in the portal. Branch, Hudson, and Robinson are all in the portal. It's a legit question as to whether USC will have any proven production at the skill positions in this game. Based on that fact, I think A&M wins this game, and I think they win this game easily. So I've got the Texas A&M Aggies 35, the USC Trojans 10.
Yeah, I came to a very similar conclusion. I think if USC had more, I mean, even if they just had Woody Marks or Joyner playing in this game, I might even put this in somewhat USC's favor because of how well their running game is. But even then, I don't know if I could do that, I guess, because I just don't trust Lincoln Riley.
No.
I don't trust him at all even if he did have both Joyner and Marks in the backfield, that he would use them correctly and still not, and still find a way to lose this game. I think that's what he would do. I don't trust Lincoln Riley. I don't think he's good enough to coach in the Big Ten. And I don't think he's good enough to coach well enough to beat Texas A&M, even with more of those players that are, unfortunately, as you stated, opting out of this game. So I agree. I think Texas A&M is probably going to roll. I think Maeva might have some bright spots where he'll look good here and there. But also, I think he's also turnover prone. And I expect Texas A&M to win. I see this game 23-7.
Okay, nice. So yeah, it looks like a losing season potentially for USC, which is not what they had in mind when they signed up to join the Big Ten.
No,
that's for sure. All right, moving on to Saturday, December 28th, we have the 7-5 Boston College Eagles versus the 6-6 Nebraska Cornhuskers. The line is Nebraska by 2.5. Mercurial Boston College QB Thomas Castellanos was benched in November, much like Miller Moss at USC and Connor Wegman at Texas A&M. Castellanos promptly jumped in the transfer portal and left things fully to Grayson James. James has completed a respectable 64% of his passes since taking over with a modest 7.2 yards per attempt, 6 TDs, and 2 picks. That said, he played his best ball in the last 2 games of the season, convincing wins over North Carolina and Pitt, so that's encouraging. BC relies on senior RBs, senior Key Robichaux and Trayshawn Ward. Both have been decent. There's no dominant receiver in this offense. They need wide receivers Lewis Bond and Reed Harris to make plays downfield, along with tight end Kamari Morales. Can BC throw the ball? Nebraska has a good D line and a decent rushing defense. I don't believe that BC will be able to win this game just running the ball. They will need to make plays in the passing game to have a chance to pull the upset. I'm not sure whether the star D end is playing for BC, and that makes a big difference because the man had 16 and a half sacks this year. So, yeah, that makes a difference if he suits up or not. The Cornhuskers are desperate to win this bowl game and break a streak of 8 losing seasons in a row. So I believe this is a big game for Nebraska. Sure, they made a bowl, but you don't want to see your losing season streak continue for yet another long offseason so that all of your opponents, like us, can say, hey, Nebraska had yet another losing season in a row. So they want to show, this is a show me kind of game for the Cornhuskers. They want to prove that they've made progress. John, how do you see this one going?
I think this is going to be an interesting game. I think this could be close. I don't have any faith in Nebraska's offense, especially with some of their opt-outs and their transfers and everything like that. I think they've lost some key pieces. I know Raiola is still there, but I don't have a lot of faith that he has many options to throw to. So I think that their offense just is not very potent. And defensively, sure. Yeah. The D line, I think, will be able to do just fine stopping the Boston College running attack. But I think Boston College has a little bit more of an edge through the air. I think their quarterback is pretty good, and he's capable of also running the ball if necessary. Their pass game definitely looks dangerous. And their receiver, Reed Harris, I think is solid. Yeah. I think he's going to be obviously he'll be the main target, and I think he'll be able to do some damage against this Nebraska secondary. Because again, I just don't have a lot of faith in that secondary at this time. But it could be close through most of the game. Maybe a little bit of back and forth. I don't think there's going to be any fireworks or anything like that. I think it'll probably be pretty low scoring. But I see BC being able to do just enough through the air and being able to win this game. And another somewhat disappointing year for Nebraska. I think Boston College will win this game 20-10.
All right. Nebraska needs, I think you're exactly right. I think they need Frosh QB Dylan Raiola to show up and play well. He's been up and down this year, as most true Frosh are. But with guys opting out and stuff, will he have anyone to throw to? How's that going to go? He makes plays, but you want to see him limit the interceptions and the turnover-worthy throws. Raiola threw 10 picks this year, which is a lot, considering he only threw 12 touchdowns. He's also taken 26 sacks, which, again, if Boston College has their star edge rusher, is going to be something that is a factor. So I say watch that BC pass rush. Whether or not they can get home without blitzing, I think goes a long way towards determining who wins this game.
Yeah.
That said, I don't believe in this Nebraska team yet. I just don't. Like, they slid too much. They underachieved too much this year. I think they've made progress. I think they're still a work in progress. And I think Matt Rule will have a better team next year than he did this year. So I've got Boston College 20, Nebraska 17.
Yep.
All right. Again, another close one for us.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have on Monday, December 30th, we have the Trans Perfect Music City Bowl. We have the 8-4 Iowa Hawkeyes facing off against the number 19, 9-3 Mizzou Tigers. 1:30 p.m. game on ESPN. The line is -3 in favor of Missouri. Mizzou and Iowa both had favorable schedules this year. Both had good years, but both underachieved relative to expectations with the production they had returning and the respective schedules they face. Both of these teams desperately wanted to make the college football playoff this year. For Iowa, the big story is that superstar running back Caleb Johnson is opting out of this bowl game. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's not an exaggeration to say that Johnson wasn't just the cornerstone of the Iowa offense. He was the Iowa offense this year. When he didn't get going, Iowa lost. Superstar Mizzou wide receiver Luther Burden is not playing in this game either. So you're looking at two teams neutered of their best offensive players. Both these teams play good defense. Without Burden, expect Mizzou to focus on getting the ball to senior Theo Weiss, who had 809 yards receiving this year. So that's good news. The other good news for Mizzou is that fifth-year senior Brady Cook, QB, will be playing in this game. He completed a solid 63% of his passes this year for nearly 2,300 yards and 9 TDs to just 2 picks. So it's a big deal that he's playing. For Iowa, Brendan Sullivan will be the starting QB. The good news is that his mobility and threat to run helped unlock Caleb Johnson this year once he took over at QB. The bad news is, without Johnson, how does Sullivan do? At Northwestern, Sullivan made some good plays, but he threw too many balls up for grabs. That's a no-go playing for Kirk Ferentz. So how does Iowa get yards in this game? John, what do you think about this one?
Well, first I want to share some notes that I got from a fellow fan of the pod here. His name is Chris, and great guy. We've gone, both Mike and I were at the USC Gopher game with him, and he is a Mizzou fan.
Yeah, shout out to Chris.
Yeah, so I wanted to just share some things that he said, and I'm just going to go, there are just little notes here. I just want to read through them before I give you my opinion. And he talked about how Luther Burden III opted out from Mizzou, but the rest of the receivers room have been better than him most of the season. Now that may be because most teams keyed on him, but Chris still thinks that the room is too good for Iowa to hold back. Also, Mizzou's running game was fairly strong this season, so you can't just hit down the passing game and hope to win. And with Cook having plenty of time to finally get as healthy as he will be, he thinks he's going to have a monster game. He thinks the kid willed Mizzou to several wins this year with a bad injury. Now healthy in his final game, he thinks he might even be the MVP of this game. Plus, where Iowa is a stout defense with a great run game, they have zero pass game, and Mizzou is solid, if not spectacular, in every facet defensively. Both teams lost their cheat code player in Caleb and LB3, but he thinks Mizzou has far more depth and much better second receiver to replace Burden than Iowa does in RB2, who will have to take over for Caleb. He referenced the Arkansas game, saying they were able to find success through the air, but with Brady Cook being able to run the ball and throw and healthy, that he expects Mizzou to roll. And you know what? I got to agree.
Sure.
I do. I know. I think if Caleb Johnson were playing, this would be a different story. I still have to say I would agree. I would think that Mizzou would win because I think Brady Cook is freaking electric, man.
He's great.
When he is on, he's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so I just think that Mizzou has too many more weapons on that field offensively. I think their defense is solid. Iowa is just like they're a one-sided team, man. Like their defense is going to be good because it always is, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in Brendan Sullivan. I don't believe in the rest of the running back room. I have no idea how they're going to score points. I really don't. Unless the defense, maybe has like a pick six, but like that's really it. Or they're able to kick a field goal. I don't think it's going to come down to that. And Mizzou's offense is too effective to just rely on being able to try to burn clock and kick field goals here and there. Like that's just not going to happen. It's not going to cut it. So I see Mizzou winning this game pretty handily. I think Mizzou is going to win this 28 to Iowa's 13.
All right. My thought is that Iowa, being coached by Kirk Ferentz, is going to be extremely conservative, run the ball, and just hope for the best in this game. And I just don't think that's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Mizzou has more dynamic athletes playing in this game than Iowa does. And I think with two decent defenses, the fact that Iowa is down their best player, a player they ran their entire offense through,
yep.
I just don't know how they're going to score points. I'm with you. I think you're exactly right there. So I think this is yet another lopsided bowl loss for Kirk Ferentz. He's had a few of those of late.
Yep.
Iowa has been very good in the regular season, but they've been bad in the postseason lately. The last 5 years or so.
Yep.
For the most part. So yeah, I've got the Mizzou Tigers 24, the Iowa Hawkeyes 10.
There you go. All right.
But I also think it could be more than that. Like if Mizzou scores, if they get up early and Iowa's trying to play from behind, it could get real pear-shaped.
Well, and I think if Brady Cook really is the healthiest he's been all season.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, it could be even more than what I predicted as well. I agree. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Moving on. Tuesday, December 31st, day we like to call New Year's Eve. Started off with the ReliaQuest Bowl. The number 11, 9-3 Alabama Crimson Tide playing against the 7-5 Michigan Wolverines. This is an 11 a.m. game on ESPN. The line is Alabama by 10.5. Michigan has a really good defensive line led by Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. Will they play in this game? I think they are, but it's not clear to me. Michigan needs those guys to play and dominate if they're going to have a chance, because Alabama has an at time limited, sort of predictable offense led by Jalen Milroe. I think with those guys, there's a chance that Michigan can play against them and can, keep Milroe in a box, not let him scramble for a bunch of yards, keep them under control that way. The problem, though, is that, running back Khalil Mullings for Michigan is great. The Wolverines still don't have a downfield passing game at all. Alabama has a good long ball thrower in Jalen Milroe. He's a dynamic runner, leads the Tide in rushing as well. So the first, second, and third job will be containing Jalen Milroe. Wide receiver Ryan Williams is the second best true frost wide receiver in the country and has an amazing 857 yards receiving this year and 8 TDs. Jeremy Bernard also had a big year with 714 yards receiving. Excuse me. And here's the thing. If Michigan wins the turnover battle, runs the ball, controls the game, limits big plays, they have a chance, but I just don't see it. I think Bama makes not a ton, but enough plays downfield to score enough points to get a lead against Michigan, against a Michigan team that struggles to score points. So I have the Alabama Crimson Tide 31, the Michigan Wolverines 10. John, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, I see it very similar as well. The only reason I gave it a little bit of pause is if, like you said about the opt-outs, if Michigan doesn't have those key opt-outs on the defensive line, I could see Michigan playing a very similar game to what they did to Ohio State.
Yes.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And if they do that, this could go in a very similar way. I still think Alabama wins, but I want to look at this as if Michigan isn't suffering from those opt-outs, because because we don't know at this point. Yeah. So I'm going to give my prediction based on that they are playing, and I still have Alabama winning, but I see this Alabama winning 17-10.
Oh, okay. So you're thinking ugly, low scoring. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. I think they're going to, Michigan, if they play, I think Michigan can drag them down into the mud, keep it close, but I think Alabama in the end is going to be able to win out with their superior offensive talent.
How funny would it be after ESPN spent all this time trying to tell us Alabama should have made the playoff? How funny would it be if they lost to a 7-5 Michigan team?
It would be incredible.
I mean, dude, Feinbaum would have to shut down the show. You have to shut it down.
Yeah. What do you do?
Yeah. What would he even say?
Oh, dude,
that would be I'd never cheer for Michigan, but I am rooting for that outcome.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That would be incredible.
Amazing. Wow. All right. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah. Let's keep it going.
We have a fun one coming up. The Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. Featuring, this is a legit great game. Number 15, 9-3 South Carolina Gamecocks versus the number 20, 9-3 Illinois Illini. It's a 2 p.m. game on ABC. The line is South Carolina by 9.5. We're stating that it started at 10.5, but has moved a point in Illinois' direction. This is a game between two teams who have arguments that they should have made the college football playoff. South Carolina ended the year on fire with, I think, 6 straight wins or something like that. And Illinois racked up a 9-3 record with their only losses to Penn State, Oregon, and Minnesota. So it's been a really successful year for Brett Bielema at Illinois and also for Shane Beamer at South Carolina. For South Carolina, it's all about electric dual threat QB Lenora Sellers. He completed a solid 65% of his passes for almost 2,300 yards, a healthy 8.6 yards per attempt, 17 TDs to 7 picks. So he will make mistakes despite his electric ability. He is still a first-year starter after all. He also ran for 655 yards. So he can do damage in a lot of ways.
Yes.
At running back, it's about Raheem Sanders, who is solid but unspectacular. And at receiver, it's by committee. Tight end Joshua Simon is the nominal leader. Wide receivers Bennett and Harbor need to step up and make some plays for them. I question if those receivers can be consistent for the Gamecocks. South Carolina also has an outstanding D-line. Outstanding. So it'll be up to the Illinois O-line to play well enough up front to give Altmaier the time to get the ball to Bryant and Franklin. That's the key matchup for me. For Illinois, QB Luke Altmaier had a solid, improved year from last season. He wasn't amazing, but he took a big step up, and you have to give him credit for that. Illinois had a couple RBs who are okay, but it does look like superstar wide receiver Pat Bryant is going to play in the bowl game, which is a big deal. If you have him and Zachary Franklin, then you have a really impressive duo. John, how do you see this one breaking down?
Look, Lenora Sellers is a freak.
Yes.
He is insanely quick. He has amazing awareness, escapability, fast, his vision. I mean, this guy he's the real deal. And, give him 1 or 2 more years. I mean, this guy is going to be up. I think he could be a possible future Heisman candidate. He's outstanding.
Yeah.
I think, if they build the team around him in the way that I think they're going to, with some of the transfers that they've been getting. A buddy of mine out here on tour is a Gamecocks fan, so he's been filling me in on a lot of the stuff that's going down. And Shane Beamer's building something in South Carolina, dude.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think that there's potential for the South Carolina team to be a college football playoff team next year. I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
Yeah, I really wouldn't be surprised. So with that being said, I'm not sure that they're there yet on the offensive line. Watching that offensive line, is amazing as Lenora Seller is, and thank God he's so quick and he's got a great, this ability to escape. It reminds me a lot of a Maryland offense with Talia Tungabailoa.
Interesting.
There's some solid, skill position players on the offense, but their offensive line had trouble holding blocks when they were playing against Clemson. And I was noticing that Sellers had to, he just had to run a lot. Thankfully, he's amazing at it. So that could be some issues there. If Illinois' defensive line can really step up and get that pressure on him and get the linebackers involved and keep him contained, I think there's an ability to stop this South Carolina offense, or at least limit it. Which I think is possible. I think Illinois has the ability to do so. And with Pat Bryant playing now, I think that also brings in a whole nother factor. I wasn't anticipating that happening, but that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I want to lean South Carolina. I really do. But I think for me, this is actually more of a toss up than what I'm sure that the national media is going to give them. I could see it really going either way. I can see Illinois finding a way to win this game with just the ability of Brett Bielema being able to coach a good game, which I trust him to be able to do. We've seen it. I don't think South Carolina is unbeatable, and I think Illinois has every much a bit of talent as South Carolina does on the field overall. Obviously, I think Lenora Sellers is probably the superior quarterback, but Luke Altmaier has the most experience, and I think he's just looked really solid.
And he has better guys to throw to.
He has better guys to throw to, and he makes less mistakes. Lenora Seller still makes freshman mistakes, so you got to hope he will do that. And if he doesn't, well, then you're probably in trouble. So I'm having a lot of trouble picking this one, man. My heart wants to pick Illinois, but then there's that part of me just seeing how outstanding Lenora Sellers is that I'm like, I feel like I have to pick the Gamecocks. So I am going to pick the Gamecocks, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be South Carolina 31 with Illinois 28.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. Maybe I'll end up being wrong here, but 9.5 points starting at 10.5 points seems downright disrespectful. Yeah, South Carolina's good. They finished the year hot, but Illinois is good too, and they also finished the year well. And I think Bryant and Franklin playing is a big deal, as I think those are really tough matchups for South Carolina in the secondary. So I'm sure Lenora Sellers will get his. I'm sure he'll be dynamic and amazing. But I have faith in Bielema, in a Bielema defense, to come up with a game plan where he doesn't just go ballistic for 4 quarters.
Yeah.
So I am picking the upset. I've got the Illinois Illini 27, the South Carolina Gamecocks 24.
Love that.
Boom. And dude, if that happens, it's 10 games for Brett Bielema. 10 games at Illinois. Which hasn't been done since what, Ron Zook?
Yeah.
Been a long time.
Oh, but who's been saying it? Don't doubt Bielema. We did.
Don't do it. We didn't. But
We
even
did
we
not.
didn't think he was going to win 9 games.
No, I didn't think so.
I was like, oh, they're going to go 7-5. But yeah, then
Yeah.
they went 9-3. Yeah, that'll happen.
Sure.
All right. God, if you had told me before the year that Minnesota was going to beat Illinois, but they were still going to win 9 games, I would have looked at their schedule and been like, good work, Brett.
Yeah.
Good work. Yeah. All right, moving on to the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. We have the number 6, 12-2 Penn State Nittany Lions versus the number 3, 12-1 Boise State Broncos. Fun fact, both teams are previously undefeated at the Fiesta Bowl. So that's fun for them. And, of course, one of those Boise State wins was the 2007 Fiesta Bowl, which, John, is the greatest non-Gopher game I have ever seen in my life. That was the epitome of everything college football can be and is at its absolute best. Boise won running both a hook and lateral in the middle of the field on the last drive to get in position to score the touchdown. And then on the game-winning 2-point conversion, they ran a Statue of Liberty play. And that fooled the defense so badly that after the running back trotted into the end zone untouched, he ran over to his cheerleader girlfriend and proposed. That is drama, my friend. And I think Oklahoma was like a 4-score favorite in that game or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, anyway, I digress. But that was, man, if you ever are bored in the long off season, go back and watch the 2007 Fiesta Bowl. You won't be disappointed. Anyway, in this game, this Boise State team is all about running back Ashton Jeanty, who's the best running back in the country, came up runner-up for the Heisman Trophy in an extremely closely contested race with winner Travis Hunter of Colorado. Jeanty has just under 2,500 yards rushing for the year on 7.3 yards per rush, 29 TDs. Those are video game numbers, John.
Mm-hmm.
Boise's only loss of the season was to number 1 overall seed Oregon by just 3 points. So the Broncos very much deserve to be here. QB Maddox Madsen has had a nice year, completing 62% of his passes. He throws the ball to former Indiana Hoosier wide receiver Cam Camper and tight end Matt Lauder. And it's key that they get the passing game going. Because this Penn State D-line is the best they will see all year, full stop. I do not believe that Boise will be able to just hand the ball to Jeanty all game and have it work out for them. He will get his, I'm sure. But against this Penn State D, defensive coordinator Tom Allen will squeeze guys into his patented Tom Allen hug box. He'll go man up on the outside, challenge Boise by attacking gaps up front and daring them to throw downfield. So Boise's going to have to be able to throw the ball well enough to get Penn State to back off a little bit. I also wonder if Boise will be ready for this Penn State rushing attack. Remember, Penn State ran for almost 300 yards against Oregon. So don't be surprised if Penn State racks up huge yards on the ground with Singleton and Allen in this game as well. John, how do you see this one breaking down?
I mean, I think this is going to look very similar to the Penn State SMU game. I really do. I think maybe early on they'll be able to scheme something up, and Jeanty is going to break off a big run. Maybe one, maybe twice, but it's not going to be anywhere near enough. This Penn State defense is just absolutely incredible, and I don't think even someone as amazing as Jeanty is going to be able to hold up. And Boise State's offensive line, they're outmatched by the size advantage that Penn State has and the speed advantage. I don't think they're going to be able to keep Abdul Carter out of the backfield or from getting to Gentry behind the line of scrimmage. I think it's just going to be an absolute slaughter, to be honest with you. Offensively, sure, I think I'm with you. I think, I didn't think about it at the time talking about the SMU game, but you're right. I think James Franklin has another opportunity to keep things pretty vanilla. Because offensively, I don't think he's going to have to do a lot.
No.
And yeah, I see Penn State rolling pretty easily. I'd say 35-10.
Okay. Yeah. I think Tyler Warren goes absolutely ape in this game. Boise doesn't have anyone who can even begin to cover him.
Yeah.
Plus, Boise State will be trying to stop the Penn State rushing attack. So they'll be crowding the box, trying to stop Penn State from running.
Yeah.
So I'm saying Tyler Warren puts up 150 plus yards receiving and multiple touchdowns. That's my big prediction for this game. John, how are you going to block Abdul Carter?
You can't. This team can't.
This team can't. So that means Boise State can't run to his side at all.
Nope.
They have to run away from him. And then you're running away from him into the rest of the D-line, which is also very good.
Yeah.
And deny Dennis Sutton at the other defensive end spot, he's also pretty tough.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the Penn State defense is really good. So I don't think Boise State's been great. I think Ashton Genty's amazing. I think he'll make some highlight plays by himself in this game because he's that kind of player. But I just think the speed and size and talent is such an advantage for Penn State.
Yeah.
So I have the Penn State Nittany Lions 38, the Boise State Broncos 17.
Okay.
All right. Coming down the stretch, we got two more games. And the next one, played on Wednesday, January 1st, 2025, is the granddaddy of them all. The Rose Bowl, presented by Prudential. We have the number 8, 11-2 Ohio State Buckeyes versus the number 1, 13-0 Oregon Ducks. This is a 4 p.m. game on ESPN. The line is Ohio State by 2.5. It started Ohio State -1, so it has continued to move in the Buckeyes' direction, which is interesting that the early money is all coming in on Ohio State. This is a rematch of the best game of the entire college football season this year, if you ask me. Yeah. Oregon's 32-31 triumph over Ohio State at Autzen. However, this one won't have a home crowd. It will be a true neutral site game, and that is cheering hard for and against both teams. And that always makes it loud, right? Because normally the home crowd only yells when the team's on defense or after a big offensive play. But in a neutral site game with this many fans, you're going to have the crowd yelling all the time because somebody's always on defense and or just made an offensive play.
Well, this is also it's an old school, old-fashioned Big Ten, former Pac-12 matchup at the Rose Bowl.
Oh, yeah. Think of the history of Ohio State playing Oregon at the Rose Bowl.
It's really cool. Yeah.
It is cool. Ohio State's also won all those games.
That's true.
Just saying. Just throwing that out there. But yes, it is cool to have an old school big pack matchup in the Rose Bowl the way it was meant to be. What's the biggest difference in this matchup this time? I think it's that superstar Oregon defensive end Jordan Birch will be back for this game. I think that's a big advantage as he's an absolute game wrecker. Also, Oregon once again has Tez Johnson back playing well, as we saw in the Big Ten title game. Tez Johnson and Jeremiah Smith for Oregon and Ohio State respectively are quite simply the most electric wide receivers in the entire nation.
Yeah.
These guys are freakish talents, both of them. Johnson has the deep speed and route running, while Smith is the most physically and mentally mature Frosh wide receiver I've ever seen in my entire life. The guy just plays like a senior most of the time, despite his youth. But Ohio State and Oregon have fantastic receivers behind their top guys. Oregon has Stewart, Holden, and the tight end Ferguson, while Ohio State has star senior wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, along with Carnell Tate. Oregon has top running back Jordan James and second banana Noah Whittington. Ohio State has the two-headed monster of Travion Henderson and Quinshad Judkins. At QB, Oregon has the best QB in America, Heisman finalist Dylan Gabriel, while Ohio State has Will Howard, who just played the best game of his life against Tennessee. So, John, who do you have in this one? How do you see it breaking down?
Dude, I don't even know.
Right?
I have no idea where to even start with this. There's so many thoughts or just I don't know where to begin because I think both teams are so extraordinary. They're both so freaking good everywhere. So it's the best on the best, and I don't see any glaring part in either team that I can be like, oh well, this is going to be a factor where this team might lose that because this is a weak spot here or there. Where there just isn't with Oregon or Ohio State to me at this time. The way they've both been playing, I don't see any glaring weaknesses. And I think it's probably going to end up being a very similar game to what we saw previously. It's going to be who makes the least amount of mistakes, who doesn't get penalized is enough, who makes. It's going to come down to play calling. It's going to be who coaches. Who is this? Is this a Ryan Day, Dan Lanning face-off, man? Because like they both have the best of the best as pieces and tools to win this game. It's going to be who coaches better, who coaches the best game, and who doesn't make mistakes. And that's it. Otherwise, it's going to be even as far as I'm concerned. So I can't point to anything being like, well, this player or this position or whatever. I can't. I think it's going to come down to whoever is the better coach that day and whoever makes the least amount of mistakes. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I'm with you. I think this is about as close as it gets. It's crazy. I think it's kind of crazy to bet against Dylan Gabriel at this point.
Yeah.
The man has nearly 3,600 yards passing on a blistering 73% completion percentage, nearly 9 yards per attempt, 28 TDs, just 6 picks. Oregon has the fastest receiver in America. Oregon has Jordan Birch and Trayshawn Holden back after not really playing or only playing until they got kicked out for spitting, in Holden's case, in the first game. Still the weirdest ejection of the whole season.
So ridiculous.
Just absolutely absurd. Oregon can and should win this game, in my opinion. They are the most complete team. That said, John, Ohio State looked like an all-time juggernaut against Tennessee. The D-line was unreal. The DBs were amazing. And the offensive skill players were absolutely lights out across the board. Ryan Day saw the low point of his tenure when he lost to Michigan to end the regular season, despite being a 3-touchdown favorite. But sometimes you got to hit rock bottom to appreciate where you've been.
Yep.
Sometimes you need a failure to galvanize a team and refocus them on their ultimate goal. And I think that's what happened with these Buckeyes. I think Ohio State's a team of destiny. I think they are still the most talented team in the country. And I also think we've seen Dylan Gabriel make bad mistakes, like the interception in the end zone against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Oregon is 13-0. They have faced very little adversity, even the Ohio State game they got at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think Ohio State's been forged in fire, man. Iron against iron all year as the most talented team in the conference, in the best conference. I picked Ohio State. You and I both did to win the national title last summer. I cannot ignore the team of destiny vibes around this squad, nor can I ignore the absolute juggernaut all-time performance we saw against a very talented Tennessee team.
Yeah.
That was a very good Tennessee team that Ohio State just made them look cheap and slow and low rent.
Mm-hmm.
So we've said it before. I think this is the real national title game. Barring major injury, I believe the winner of this game will go on to win the national title this year, securing a second consecutive national title for the Big Ten Conference and the second consecutive Big Ten team to win a title.
Yep.
Since Michigan won't win, it has to be somebody. It's going to be Oregon or Ohio State or Penn State. I believe Ohio State won't be denied. I think Ryan Day coaching, I think he saw the light, and everywhere he was timid against Michigan, he attacked against Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
He attacked in every moment of that game throughout. And if we see Ohio State do that, then I don't think it'll come down to the last possession, I'm sure. But I don't think these Buckeyes are going to be denied. Mm-hmm. So I have the Ohio State Buckeyes 38, the Oregon Ducks 34.
It's amazing because all I can say to everything you said, including that score prediction, is yes. I agree. And wholeheartedly.
Do you have the same score?
I have the exact same score.
No, you don't.
But I also believe, and like the only thing I'll add to this, to everything you said, because like you just said everything I would have said exactly. So the only thing I will add is that Ryan Day is still coaching for his job.
Yes.
That is a major factor. So if he does not win a national title this year, Ryan Day could very well be gone.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's a real thing. We're not exaggerating. It is a real thing at the Ohio State University. So
both Urban Meyer and Mike Vrabel are trying to maneuver, to take his job behind the scenes.
Yes.
It's very much a Judas thing where Urban Meyer, the guy, your own mentor, is coming for you.
Yeah. He gave you the job. He gave you the keys.
He gave you the job and he's trying to take it away now. It's like, it's Shakespearean.
Yeah.
But I think that has them focused. And I think that the Buckeyes know that Ryan Day is holding on.
Yep.
And they need everything every moment.
Yep.
And I see, Ryan Day, I still don't like that he always wears black because he's too insecure and won't be seen in the school colors. That drives me crazy. It's like, your team were all scarlet. They were all scarlet, and you came out in black. Really? Come out in scarlet, or at least gray.
Yeah, do something. Yeah,
like, come on, man. You're the coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Wear the colors.
Yeah,
dude. If PJ came out and coached our games in black, I would run off the sideline and give him a piece of my mind, and then I would get arrested and probably banned from the bank.
Yeah,
but I would do that because it would make me that upset. So yeah, Ryan Day. That's my only gripe with Ryan Day, but I think he's doing an awesome job. I think what he did against Tennessee was special. Like, I think Ryan Day is ready to attack and to claim a national title.
Yep.
And then, all he has to left is to beat Michigan next year somehow.
Which you wouldn't think it would be that hard, but apparently it really is.
Apparently it really is. I don't think he'll ever go into Michigan with such a bad game plan ever again.
Oh, he can't. I'm
surprised
it
was an arrogant game plan this year.
Like, what the? Oh, yeah. Wow.
But dude, maybe it all worked out for Ohio State. Maybe this is exactly what they needed.
When they lost to Virginia Tech in what was it, 2014?
Yep.
Dude, everyone wrote them off. Oh, that's it. It's done. Mm-hmm. It's over. And what did they do?
Won the national title with a third-string quarterback.
Yep. So, no, man. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that this is the destiny is national title.
Yeah.
For this team.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I think that Rose Bowl is going to be friend of the pod. Phil is trying to get his wife to sign off on him going to it. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you got to go. You got to go.
Absolutely.
So if he does, we'll see if we can get him. Maybe we can get him on the horn at some point and give feedback if he goes. Yeah. All right. Last up, John, and we didn't plan it this way. This is the way the calendar planned it for us. On Friday, January 3rd, we have the Duke's Mayo Bowl, featuring the 7-5 Minnesota Golden Gophers and the 6-6 Virginia Tech Hokies. This is a 6:30 p.m. game on ESPN. The line is Minnesota by 6.5. Virginia Tech's having a lot of opt-outs in this game, including star QB Kyron Drones, who's hurt and recovering from injury. They will also be absent some of their best skill players. That said, Minnesota will be down several important players too, including a few linemen, star wide receiver Daniel Jackson, star linebacker Cody Lindenberg, etc. I don't really know what version of Virginia Tech we are going to get.
Yeah.
A lot of this comes down to backup Frosh QB William Pop Watson, which is fun. I love a young guy who goes by Pop. That's just funny. Watson played the last 2 games of the season and looked terrible against Duke before playing better against Virginia. For Virginia Tech to have a chance here, I think that Watson needs to impact the game both as a passer and as a runner. As for Minnesota, QB Max Brosmer and star O-lineman Quinn Carroll made clear they were playing in this game, and they are pumped about it. PJ Fleck is an amazing 6-0 in bowl games at Minnesota. Fleck teams tend to have few opt-outs, and the guys who do opt out are usually replaced by guys who are already getting reps and are ready to contribute. So Fleck really gets the guys to buy in for these bowl games. He's good at using the bowl game practices to get guys ready who can contribute in the bowl game and then contribute next year. John, how do you see this one breaking down?
Well, yeah, Pop Watson, he's fast, he's mobile. Tootin, very good. If there is Tootin playing, have we gotten confirmation?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, if he is, absolute threat, super fast, great vision, fantastic running back. If not, well, I mean, I think the Gophers won't have any issue stopping the run if that's the case, unless it's just to contain Pop Watson. I noticed that Virginia Tech, I was just watching some of the game when they played Virginia, and they really love to run the jet sweep option.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot.
Yes.
So they're going to try to they're going to try to get you out of position with some trickery and some, get your eyes moving around the field. But I just have a feeling like the Minnesota defense is just too well disciplined to fall for that. I think that PJ and I think Corey Heatherman are going to be keyed in on that and being fully aware. So I'm not too concerned about that. Defensively, Virginia Tech, their edge rushers did a good job. I think they've got some speed on the outside and they can get to the quarterback. But I think again, with what Minnesota's bringing back and holding through this bowl game, that it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And I think with Brosmer having the awareness that he does and looking the way he has throughout the end of the season, I think it should be just fine. I'm not worried really much at all about this being a Gopher loss. Obviously, things can happen if they
Sure.
come out flat-footed or they're coming out asleep and they have to play catch-up. Sure. Maybe Pop Watson goes off and it's just, they look outstanding. But all I've been hearing coming out of Blacksburg is that there's just an insane amount of transfers and some key players. So I don't think even they know what team is going to be taking the field. Where Minnesota, we have more of a grasp on who's going to be showing up, and I feel good about that. So I think Minnesota wins this game.
I think the good thing for Minnesota is that it's split up, right? You don't have a bunch of guys at one position opting out. You have one linebacker, one O lineman, one D lineman, one corner, and Justin Wally, which, man, I will say, pour one out. I'm sad that we don't get a Justin Wally, Daniel Jackson. Those guys started for 4 years.
I know.
I would have liked to see those guys, play in the last game. Hopefully, once we get the revenue sharing going, then at that point, guys will have it contractually obligated to play in these games. And then we can, protect them for the draft, get them draft insurance or whatever. Colorado, Dion talked about doing that, getting draft insurance for guys in case they get hurt in a bowl game. I think that's a great idea. To encourage more guys to play and to get into their contracts going forward once we have full revenue sharing that they're required to play. So I just think, Minnesota's down some people at a few key people at key positions, but they have most of their guys playing. And most importantly, they have Darius Taylor at running back, and they have Elijah Spencer at wide receiver. And I think that's a big deal. Taylor can be a factor both running and receiving. Well, Spencer gets to step out of Daniel Jackson's shadow and gets to be, instead of being the second banana, which he was a great second banana all year, Elijah Spencer gets to be QB1 or a wide receiver 1, for his last college game. So I think he's going to rise to the occasion. I think we're going to see a really big game from Elijah Spencer. I think he's going to do some good things. I think Jamison Gears at tight end might be more involved in the offense a little bit. You might even see more of like a Lemeki Brockington, getting some targets. So I think Minnesota, man, PJ Fleck is so good at getting his guys up for bowl games. He's so good at it. He's as good as anyone in college football. I think he's only lost one bowl game ever, and that was by one score when he was at Western Michigan to Wisconsin in the Cotton Bowl. So PJ Fleck, it's just all the good things about building a program, getting guys to buy in and play hard and all that kind of stuff is really important in bowl season. And I just think, man, I think Minnesota's motivated and angry to get an 8th win. They know they were close to having 9 or 10 wins this year. They know how close they were. And I think they want to send a message. So I expect Minnesota to run the ball, to throw the ball, and play D well, en route to a solid, if unspectacular, bowl victory and PJ Fleck's 8+ win season in the last 5 full years, which is pretty solid. So yeah, man, I'm really pumped to watch the Gophers play one more time this year. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think Max Brosmer plays great. I think it's a swan song for him. He has a chance to get drafted in the NFL, and the fact that he's going to play this game and wants to, I think that's going to galvanize guys. Your leader, your QB, Max Brosmer, says, I could opt out of this game and try to get ready for the NFL, but I'm not. I'm playing. This is awesome. Let's do this. And I think the fact that Minnesota has that and Virginia Tech doesn't have that is a difference in this game. So I have the Minnesota Golden Gophers 30, the Virginia Tech Hokies 13.
Okay.
I think Virginia Tech scores early, and then I think once the new linebacker and gets up to speed, then I think we start to shut them down.
Well, I have the Minnesota Golden Gophers winning 38 to Virginia Tech's 14.
Ooh, so you're calling for even a bigger beatdown.
I think Max goes off. I think Spencer has the game of a freaking lifetime. He wants to be drafted as well. And I think it's just, Yeah, I think we're going to play the lights out. I think defensively we're going to look great. I don't know. I just have a lot of faith in this team, man. Especially, like I said, even Virginia Tech doesn't know what team they're going to put on that field. We have such a better idea of what's going to be happening on that field, and I think having that, understanding and knowing, across the board, not just for the coaches, but for your fellow players, knowing who you're going to be playing with is going to be a big deal, and allow that confidence to take over. So, yeah, man, I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it.
If there's one thing I know about PJ Fleck is he's good for a gimmicky play early in a bowl game.
Yeah.
So what do you think it's going to be? Against West Virginia, he handed it off to our offensive lineman, Daniel Faalele, 4 times until he scored a touchdown. He tried the fake. I mean, we saw him try against Penn State, try the throw to Ursary. So maybe, but Ursary's not playing in this game. And against last year in the bowl game, they did the fake extra point with Draga and tried to have Dragon run it in. Remember?
Yep.
Dragon tried to run the, and he almost got there.
He almost did.
What's the big PJ trick play early in this game to try to get Minnesota off to a good start?
I think Darius Taylor throws a touchdown.
I love that.
Yep.
I love it. It's simple. It's perfect. Darius Taylor pitch touchdown.
Yep, he goes to the outside, throws it into like Lemecki or Spencer or Gears, and it's a touchdown. Yeah,
I love that. I love it. Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. Well, did we miss a game here? Did we miss the Sun Bowl?
Oh no, we did, didn't we?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we hit it before we head out here. That's okay. I was just looking through my notes and I was like, "Oh yeah, we didn't touch on Washington yet, so we got to talk about the."
I'm glad, man. They would have been mad at us too.
Yes, they would have. So we can run over that real quick here before we run out of time.
Do that. Oh yeah, Louisville, Washington, the Sun Bowl. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. We'll talk about that quickly. We have the 8-4 Louisville Cardinals taking on the 6-6 Washington Huskies. This is a 1 p.m. game on CBS in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Louisville is a 2.5-point favorite. Louisville's been a really dynamic team all year. I believe that is Tyler Shuck. Is he opting out of the bowl game?
I haven't heard anything for certain. I don't know why he would at this point. I feel like
I feel like he should play, right?
I agree.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see who plays and whether he plays. We've got Isaac Brown at over 1,000 yards rushing as a Frosh. So he's an exciting guy. They've got some receivers who can make some noise. I assume Ja'Cory Brooks isn't playing for Illinois or for Louisville, right?
Yeah.
I assume he's probably opting out because he's their number 1 target. So that hurts. But, the thing about Jeff Brom is he kind of just grows receivers and quarterbacks on trees.
Yeah.
And he pulls guys out of nowhere. And so even if those guys don't play, I just think Jeff Brom is going to have them ready to go. And then I look at Washington, man. Washington, I like Damon Williams, the Frosh quarterback. He's been playing better. Obviously, we love Jonah Coleman. Jonah Coleman's great. They have the really good wide receivers in
Boston
and Giles Hunter, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so they have guys that can really play, but they just lost their defensive coordinator who took the job. Steve Belichick went to go work for his daddy again at North Carolina. So I wonder how much that hurts them. I think both teams score points here. And it's a matter of who can score the most points. So, all football is, but I think both these offenses have the players to make, and, it'll be interesting to see who opts out too. Because I'm not totally sure who is and isn't playing in this game.
As far as who would outcoach the other one? Like, who do you trust more, Brom or Jedfish?
Brom.
Yeah.
Brom, right?
That's
is that even big game Brom? We call him big game Brom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Jed Fish is a decent coach and he's done some really good stuff. But dude, Brom's special. He's a special coach.
And that's where this comes down to for me. Like, I agree. I think it could go either way. I think either team could show up and look great. And I think it's going to be close, but I got to just go with Brom after just experiencing how many years we have seeing that.
Okay. Yeah. So Tyler Shuck is not playing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it looks like Yeah, it looks like Louisville's down more guys than Washington is actually, so
Oh,
that'll be interesting.
All right. Well, I guess then,
But we're not sure. This is an old article. We don't know. There
Yeah.
could be a bunch more guys for Louisville. Like, we don't know. We don't know what we're getting in this game.
Yeah. Depending on whatever the opt-outs are, I guess with Tyler Shuck not being there, I don't know, because even I'm not sold on Washington's backup quarterback either. Like I'm not after Will Rogers. So I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. I think that both teams could, have the possibility, obviously, of winning this game. I think it could be more of a shootout. Defensively, I'm not expecting a lot of great defense.
Right.
So I think some points will be scored, but it's going to be ugly. Yeah. So I have right now, with the knowledge I think I have, which could be very wrong, and I'm sure Washington fans will tell us. But I'm going to pick Louisville because I trust Brom to win this game, 33-27.
Yeah, I think I've got. 33-27. I think that sounds reasonable. I can totally see that. I think I'm gonna go Louisville 27, Washington 20.
Okay.
I think that missing Shuck takes the high end off this offense a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think it's Jeff Brom. He's going to have some trick plays ready. Washington's not going to be ready for them, especially not with their DC gone now, and them being a little bit in flux over on that side of the ball. I think that's a bad break for Washington to lose because it's so late in the coaching cycle to be replacing. You know what I mean? Normally, if you were going to lose your DC, you would have lost him a month ago, and then you would already have a new one.
Yep.
So I don't know what that's going to look like. I think Washington is still rounding into form, whereas Louisville is a more solidified program. Yeah. Washington is still in year one of a rebuild. So, good for you for getting to a bowl game, Washington. Yeah. Won your non-conference games, won 3 Big Ten games. But I think it's Louisville here. Yeah, 27-20.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Wow. We hit them all.
We did hit them all, and we're coming in just under the 2-hour limit that we have.
Yeah.
Because of our platform, StreamYard, which limits us to 2-hour podcast, which is probably good for our own good.
Yeah, it probably is.
So we don't get too out of control and decide we're just going to do a 4-hour podcast one day.
We could. I'm sure there's definitely some subject matter we could probably go on easily. So,
yeah. So what do you got going on for the rest of your Christmas? Quick.
Oh man, just got a Christmas dinner tomorrow night with the band. And that's it, man. Otherwise today I'm doing a heck of a lot of nothing. What about you?
Oh man, I got a lot going on. I got to do some dishes right after that. Got to cook and help make a side dish for my to bring to my sisters for Christmas Eve tonight.
Cool.
Also I'm pretty much done shopping. I have to buy a couple gift cards online.
Okay.
Because to cover a couple of my nephews. I got mostly everybody taken care of.
Good.
But I got to keep a couple gift cards there. And then I got to watch The Dog Man because I found out my other sister, Elizabeth, is hosting Christmas.
Okay.
And so Christmas Eve, we're going to my one sister, Catherine's. Christmas Day, we're going to Elizabeth's. And Elizabeth told me that the dog is welcome because their dogs are going to be there.
Sure.
So, and I can't show up with a stinky dog. That makes me look like a bad dog owner.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
True.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm pretty pumped for that, but I got a busy. So as soon as we get out of here, going hard.
All right. That sounds good.
All right.
Man.
Well, thank you, everyone. We hope your Christmas and holidays and New Year are all great. Hope you enjoy the pod. And we will be back after the next round of playoff games to talk about the bowls and also talk about the playoffs.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.